treating vulnerable customers fairly. Hello, I'm Stephen Fairclough and welcome to this introduction video for treating vulnerable customers fairly, where we look at FCA expectations and how to respond. This is offered with Redcliffe training as a live webinar, and our public course splits the event over 2 half days. If, of course, you'd rather have an in-house version of the event, we can customize that to a single day for you and focus on the kind of content that's more specific to your particular audience. Let's have a look at the agenda for this particular event. We really want to take the participants through a kind of holistic understanding of the approach to meeting FCA expectations and to helping vulnerable customers get positive outcomes from their interactions with us. We start with an introduction to talk through the regulatory position. You may well already be aware of some of the regulatory publications, so we'll draw out the key messages from those and think about how we identify vulnerable customers. What are the drivers behind that vulnerability? But perhaps more usefully, what would we actually see through our day-to-day interactions with our clients that would suggest vulnerability? We also think in quite some detail about the needs of vulnerable customers and some of the preconceptions that have existed within the industry, but also how do we want to really focus on making sure the customer feels as though they are listened to, they are understood, and they are receiving specific, tailored, customized service specific to their needs. Which is difficult in an organization if you've got multiple consumer transactions, but we look to marry that and embed it within day-to-day operational processes. With a wrap-up and questions, both for me as presenter and for the other attendees, the day's quite interactive. We'll touch on some of the interaction in just a minute. And splitting it over 2 days is useful because it allows participants to reflect on the day one content overnight and bring back any questions, concerns that they've got for the day 2 session. Day 2 is a little bit more practical. So we focus on the skills and the knowledge that staff need so that they can feel more confident and be more competent in how they have what can often be difficult conversations. We'll think about practical actions to help our clients as well. Tea and sympathy is all very well. We want to build that relationship, but we should also be able to do something different. So we'll consider what we can do internally, and recognizing that the FCA believe it's good practice to consider external referrals. We'll look at some of the commonly used external bodies that can help different types of vulnerability. We'll think about your organization holistically as well, and we'll need to consider governance. We'll need to consider the reasonable steps and the evidence of reasonable steps that the organization has put in place, appropriate processes, systems, controls to help identify the right outcomes for vulnerable clients, and to also check that they're achieving those right outcomes as well. So hopefully that gives you a little overview of the 2 days that we've got. A couple of slides just to illustrate what we want to achieve. We recognize the FCA expectation. But of course, if you're an international firm and you're interested in vulnerable clients, we'll strip out the UK specific regulation and focus just on the good practices. But throughout our 2 half days here, what we'll do is think about our target market, and this overlaps with other regulation as well in terms of product oversight, governance, financial promotions. But understanding the needs of the target market, a risk-based approach to understanding vulnerability, and firms are expected to invest some time and effort into helping their staff have the right skills and capability to respond. So that's not only recognizing, but also having the conversations and being able to do something. Responding through product design, flexible customer service proposition within operational control parameters, and the communications that you have to your clients are all considered within the 2 half days. And that final session that I mentioned around the governance, around the control and reasonable steps, you can see is intended to address the regulatory expectation that you monitor how effectively your policies and procedures, A, are being implemented, and B, how are they resulting in good outcomes? I mean, do they actually work? Do they perform as you expected them to? And so if we think about a holistic model for governing your vulnerable customers framework, we need to think about front and back office as having some separate but connected responsibilities. Front office need to recognize the vulnerability and react positively to reassure the client that sharing this information is right, or that we can help them. And then they need to respond, and that's actually doing something differently. And of course, we'll need records. And this, of course, will also touch on some of the common concerns around recording information about clients in light of GDPR, and this being somewhat sensitive information regarding the client's vulnerability. So we'll wrap everything up for the frontline staff: how to recognize, react, respond, and record what they're doing, taking into account some of the good practices from the Vulnerability Task Force. And then we'll think about the back office or second line of defense responsibilities to create MI based on what's being recorded, to ensure that the dashboards or scorecards that you've got within your business can accommodate the right treating vulnerable customers fairly type data. And then how do we get that to the senior managers? How do we make sure that the MI is seen, analysed, challenged, acted on, and actions are followed up through to resolution? So it supports your senior managers in building evidence of reasonable steps. So throughout the day, it's going to be very interactive. We'll have polls to assess people's understandings and perceptions of the size of the problem, and they can then check and calibrate their thinking against others within the groups as well. There'll be case studies, there'll be practical examples taken from the FCA's publications around good and poor practices, and we've got some exercises for people to do as well to try and really think through, how would I react? How can I approach the questioning around this sensitive subject? If the sizes dictate and make it appropriate, we'll have breakout rooms and bring people back to have those group feedback discussions as well. And because it's a live webinar, I always encourage ongoing Q&A, both to me and to other participants. Hopefully you've found that useful and informative. And if you'd like any more information about our Treating Vulnerable Customers Fairly course, then please get in touch using the contact details on your screen now.